G'day guys, cortisol, step 3. Essentially it's again on page 8 of your manual that you would have had. So please write some notes with this one because there's a lot of information to come your way. So what is cortisol? So that's our first question. Now, most people would know cortisol as your stress hormone. You know, that hormone where you get that fight or flight response. Essentially it's very much, I suppose, needed. It is really needed. Now, without cortisol, we'd be in a lot of trouble. So I want to picture the actual, let's put it in the real life example, the fight or flight hormone. So if you had a lion running at you and you didn't have cortisol, essentially you wouldn't be able to move and you'd be in a lot of trouble. Okay? Now that's why cortisol is needed, is in those times of fight or flight. But the problem that we really face in society is there are a lot of emotional, physical and mental stresses that occur every day, and are not the lion charging at you, but more likely the traffic jam, more likely getting into those pair of jeans, and more than likely just those deadlines at work. Okay, so it's important to understand as the PT what your client is experiencing. So what is cortisol? Cortisol is basically a glucocorticoid. And what does that mean? Basically all that means is it has the ability to break down glycogen from the liver and move it into the actual bloodstream as a usable source of energy. Okay, that's essentially what it does. It's made by the adrenals, okay, which sit just above your kidneys, and is basically secreted on any physical or emotional stresses, irrespective if it's a lion or a dead lion. Okay. What is cortisol necessary for? Okay, so this is really important to understand. So basically, if you think about what happens in the morning, this is cortisol at work. So if you wake up and you need to actually get the day moving, cortisol is essentially secreted to break down some of those glycogen molecules and move that glucose into your blood. It obviously helps metabolize and break down some proteins as well, and along with fats. So essentially what we're getting there is with cortisol, it's helping to get us started. So what it should be there for is lower in the evening, and it should be higher in the morning when you wake up to prepare us for the day ahead. Cortisol works on circadian rhythms, it works on the sun. Okay. How can cortisol aid in fat loss? Now this is really important to understand. Cortisol is catabolic. Okay, so in excess amounts it is very catabolic to your muscle mass. Now, how can it aid in fat loss therefore? Is if we want to access fat loss is essentially a catabolic process. It's meaning that we're breaking down. So how can it aid in the essential fat loss for your clients? Well, again, it's about the exercise. By inducing exercise, we're going to get a cortisol response. Okay. What else can it help with fat loss with? Well, essentially, if you're looking for the right hormonal environment, like I've spoken a little bit about, is that you want the glucagon to be higher, which essentially will promote a higher response of cortisol. By doing this, it's going to aid in opening up the cells and secreting those fat, or those little free fatty acids that we want to use and mobilize as our usable source of energy. So it's really important that we understand that cortisol can have both the effects of, I suppose, getting us out of bed, running away from lions, but also breaking down fat. What are the effects of long-term chronic exposure to cortisol? Now this is really important to understand. Now, basically we know that it helps metabolize carbohydrates, proteins and fats. It also helps regulate our blood pressure as well. But in terms of overexposure long-term, you're probably seeing a lot of clients that may have that sort of mid-belly sort of fat. And that's shown scientifically and via research that that's been responsible for your cardiovascular disease, your chances of type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, high blood pressure. All those metabolic syndrome diseases are brought upon by that visceral fat which surrounds your stomach. Okay, and that's not good. Now, in the event that we're having long-term chronic exposure to cortisol, you should start to see things like suppressed memory, you know, poor immune function, okay, getting sick a lot, no energy in the morning, okay, waking up in the mid-morning just wired, you know. What else would you see? You'd see decreased level of sexual libido, okay, and that's really important to understand that If you're overly stressed, your body doesn't prioritize making those hormones like it once did, okay? So there's a lot of problems that are faced when we have a long-term chronic exposure to cortisol, which can obviously detrimentally affect your client's results when it comes to breaking down fat. Again, this is really important to understand. So I like to do a holistic approach with your clients, and that's one I'd suggest you do too. What is their life stress like? What's their work stress like? Their family stress? You know, are they doing to combat any of these stresses? Because if they're coming to you, they're already probably stressed, knowing that they're not where they want to be right now. They're in a state where they may be a little bit depressed, a little bit emotional, a little bit unhappy with the way they look or feel. They could be having marital problems. And it's really important to understand that their cortisol response may be just super high and actually affecting their chances of losing weight. Okay, so these are all a little bit more about cortisol and stress. Now, I've put in here tips to help manage cortisol levels, okay? So we want to obviously balance our blood sugar levels better. Removing those refined carbohydrates you would have seen in the very first video is a really good start. Adding in more fibrous greens, veg, good quality fruits, that's going to mitigate our blood sugar levels. Sunlight. Sunlight is a really important aspect to obviously getting your clients to manage their cortisol levels. If there is a tip, tell them to sit outside for 10-15 minutes in their lunch break to get that vitamin D. Okay? Meditate, yoga, walks, just calm everything down. Epsom salt baths before bed, a high concentration of magnesium sulfate has been shown to slow the cortisol response, and it's been shown to calm the central nervous system down so they get a good proper night's sleep. Okay? Get out in nature more frequently. Okay, I find this really helps to distance ourselves from social media, you know, from the burdens of needing to get this done by this done, and you know what I mean? So essentially getting out in nature more frequently is going to make them allow them to chill out and relax a bit. Massage. Massage for obvious reasons. You can't do very much when you're getting a massage other than just relax, okay? That might be the only time they get in a week, but it's going to be fantastic for them in the long term. Limit the caffeine and guarana. They're both stimulants. We don't need any more stimulants going to the body if their adrenals are just continually punching out cortisol all day, okay? Help them listen to their favourite music. Suggest that. It's a really good idea to have them sing, bounce along, just enjoy the moment, okay? And it's been shown that actually this can help mitigate and manage their cortisol levels. And supplements. Some additional supplements like rhodiola or ginseng, you know, valerian root, phosphatidylstyrene is another one, which has been shown to help with their cortisol management.